Frank Frederick Borman, 2, is a retired United States Air Force pilot, aeronautical engineer, test pilot, and NASA astronaut, best remembered as the commander of Apollo 8, the first mission to fly around the Moon, making him, along with crewmates Jim Lovell and Bill Anders, the first of only 24 humans to do so. Before flying on Apollo, he set a 14-day spaceflight endurance record on Gemini 7, and also served on the NASA Review Board, which investigated the Apollo 1 fire. After leaving NASA, he was the chief executive officer of Eastern Airlines from 1975 to 1986. Borman is a recipient of the Congressional Space Medal of Honor. Biography. Education and early career. Borman was born on March 14, 1928 in Gary, Indiana, where the Frank Borman Expressway is named after him. He is of German descent, born as the first and only child to parents Edwin and Marjorie Borman. Because he suffered from numerous sinus problems in the cold and damp weather, his father packed up the family and moved to the better climate of Tucson, Arizona, which Borman considers his hometown. He started to fly at the age of 15. Borman graduated from Tucson High School in 1946. He received a Bachelor of Science degree from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1950, where he served as an Army football manager, and along with part of his graduating class, he entered the United States Air Force and became a fighter pilot. He received his Master of Science degree in aeronautical engineering from the California Institute of Technology in 1957. Later, Borman was selected for the Aerospace Research Pilot School and became a test pilot. He completed the Harvard Business School's Advanced Management program in 1970. Borman married Susan Bugby in 1950, and they have 2 sons, Frederick and Edwin, and 4 children. Flight experience. Following graduation, Borman was a career U.S. Air Force officer. Prior to joining the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's space program in 1962, he received his pilot wings in 1951 and served as a fighter pilot with the 44th Fighter Bomber Squadron in the Philippine Islands from 1951 to 1953, and as an operational pilot and flight instructor in various squadrons in the United States, from 1953 until 1956. In 1957, he became an assistant professor of thermodynamics and fluid mechanics at West Point, where he served until 1960. In 1960, Borman began serving as an experimental test pilot engaged in organizing and administering special projects for the USAF Aerospace Research Pilot School, 1960 to 1962. During his military service, he logged over 6,000 hours of flying time. In 1966 and 1968, Borman served as special presidential ambassador on trips throughout the Far Eastern Europe. In 1970, he undertook another special presidential mission, a worldwide tour to seek support for the release of American prisoners of war held by North Vietnam. NASA career. Project Gemini. Borman was selected by NASA for the second NASA astronaut group in 1962, and was chosen as the command pilot for Gemini 7. He was one of just 4 of this group chosen to command the first Gemini missions, the others being James McDivitt, Neil Armstrong, and Elliot C. Borman flew Gemini 7 in December 1965 with pilot James A. Lovell, Jr. This was a long-endurance flight which set a 14-day record, and also acted as the target vehicle in the first space rendezvous performed by Gemini 6A. The 2 craft came within 1 foot of each other and they took turns flying around each other, taking both still and motion pictures. Apollo program. Borman was selected in late 1966 to command the third manned Apollo mission, planned as an elliptical practical medium Earth orbit test of the second manned lunar module on the first manned launch of the Saturn V lunar rocket, sometime in 1967 or early 1968. However, in January 1967, the crew of the first manned Apollo mission Apollo 1, Virgil I. Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee were killed in a fire aboard the command module, delaying the Apollo program. Following this deadly accident, the IS-204 Accident Review Board was charged with investigating the root causes of the fire and recommending corrective measures. Borman was chosen as the only astronaut to serve on the review board. In April 1967, while serving on the board, Borman was one of 5 astronauts who testified before a United States Senate committee investigating the Apollo 1 fire. His testimony helped convince U.S. Congress that Apollo would be safe to fly again. Borman was then reassigned to his LM test mission, now planned to fly as Apollo 9, in early 1969 after a first low Earth orbit LM flight commanded by Mick Devitt in December 1968. But the LM was not ready for its first flight, leading NASA management to decide to replace Borman's mission with a lunar orbit flight using just the command service module as Apollo 8 in December, making McDivitt's flight Apollo 9 in March 1969. Borman's lunar module pilot was William Anders. The command module pilot and navigator, Michael Collins, had to have back surgery and was replaced by his backup, James Lovell. Reuniting Borman with his Gemini 7 crewmate, Apollo 8 went into lunar orbit on December 24 and made 10 orbits of the Moon in 20 hours before returning to Earth. And, from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good Earth. The Apollo 8 mission is also notable for the Earthrise photograph taken by William Anders of the Earth rising above the lunar horizon as the command module orbited the Moon, and for the reading from Genesis that was broadcast to Earth from lunar orbit. The success of Apollo 8 avoided jeopardizing the goal of making the first manned moon landing by the end of 1969 by not waiting from the delayed LM, and also provided invaluable experience in navigation to the Moon. Space journalist Andrew Chaikin claims that, following the death of Gus Grissom, Borman became astronaut chief. Deke Slayton's choice to command the first moon landing attempt. In the fall of 1968, Slayton offered command of the first landing to Borman, who turned it down, choosing to retire instead. Post-NASA career, Eastern Airlines. In early 1969, Borman became a special advisor to Eastern Airlines, and after retiring from NASA and the U.S. Air Force in 1970 as a colonel, he was made Senior Vice President Operations Group at the airline company. In 1972, Borman received a phone call one evening informing him that Eastern Airlines Flight 401 had disappeared off the radar scope near Florida's Everglades. Soon, Borman himself was wading through the murky swamps, helping rescue crash victims and loading survivors into rescue helicopters. He was later promoted to Executive Vice President General Operations Manager and was elected to Eastern Airlines as Board of Directors in July 1974. In May 1975, Borman was elected President and Chief Operating Officer. He was named Chief Executive Officer of Eastern Airlines in December 1975 and became Chairman of the Board in December 1976. After Borman became Eastern Airlines' CEO, it went through the 4 most profitable years in the company's history. However, in 1983, contentious battles with labor labor unions, particularly the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, led the company to abandon several profitable programs, and the resulting losses led to the sale of the airline to Texas Air Corporation, headed by Frank Lorenzo. Borman retired from Eastern Airlines in June 1986. Retirement: Borman and his wife returned to reside in Tucson, Arizona, and then in 2006 they moved to Las Cruces, New Mexico, where he enjoyed rebuilding and flying vintage airplanes from the World War II and Korean War era. He was a member of the Society of Antique Modelers. Borman gave the commencement address to the graduating class of 2008 at the University of Arizona. He also delivered the commencement address to the graduating class of 2001 at Lynchburg College in Virginia. For a time during his retirement, Borman was the majority owner of a Las Cruces Chevrolet dealership founded by his son Fred Borman. Borman has since appeared in the documentary When We Left Earth: The NASA Missions. On November 13, 2008, Borman and his fellow Apollo 8 crewmates, Jim Lovell and Bill Anders, appeared on the NASA TV channel to discuss the Apollo 8 mission. Borman also appeared in the 2005 documentary Race to the Moon, which was shown as part of the PBS American Experience series. The film, renamed in 2013 as Earthrise: The First Lunar Voyage, centered on the events that led up to NASA's Apollo 8 mission. Borman resides with his wife Susan Borman in Bighorn County, Montana. Awards and honors: Harmon Trophy 1965, and AMP 1968, Academy of Model Aeronautics Distinguished Service Award 1968, National Geographic Society's Hubbard Medal 1969, Dr. Robert H. Goddard Memorial Trophy 1969, Golden Plate Award for Science and Exploration 1969, Society of Experimental Test Pilots James H. Doolittle Award 1976, International Space Hall of Fame 1982, Robert J. Collier Trophy, Tony Janus Award 1986, Airport Operators Council International Downs Award 1990, enshrined in the National Aviation Hall of Fame in 1982. Inducted into the U.S. Astronaut Hall of Fame in 1993. In media, in the 1998 HBO miniseries From the Earth to the Moon, Borman was played by David Andrews. Quotes: "There's no question that it was a coffin, and I'd have flown it gladly." Public comment on the hazardous design and construction of the Apollo Command Module. During 1967 Congressional testimony after serving on the AS-204 Accident Review Board. At the time, Borman was scheduled to command the third manned flight of the Apollo spacecraft. He coordinated the redesign effort to improve the safety of the spacecraft. Had that rocket not fired, I'd still be orbiting the moon forever, and I really didn't want to do that. Spoken of the Apollo 8 mission during the documentary When We Left Earth: The NASA Missions. "I've long said that capitalism without bankruptcy is like Christianity without hell. But it's hard to see any good news in this." As chairman of Eastern Airlines, tributes I-80, I-94 in Lake County, Indiana, which runs through his birthtown of Gary, Indiana, is named the Frank Borman Expressway. A Department of Defense education activity elementary school on Davis Month and Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona is named in Borman's honor. A street in Wanik, NJ is named Borman Drive after Frank, along with neighboring streets named after other fellow astronauts. Bibliography: Borman, Frank, Serling, Robert J. Countdown, an autobiography. Silver Arrow, ISBN 0-688-07929-6.